쉐도잉 하면서 틀리지 않을 수가 없어요. 속도도 그럴 수 있고 발음도 그럴 수 있고 제가 그런 거는 무시하면서 쭉 이어갈게요. 안녕하세요. 한몸TV입니다. 이번 영어 쉐도잉 영상에서는요. Children Shakespeare의 텍스트를 가지고 제가 파일을 들으면서 쉐도잉하는 모습을 보여드릴게요. 이 Children Shakespeare는 아이들을 위한 셰익스피어 작품으로 셰익스피어 작품이 가지고 있는 옛날 영어의 어떤 스타일과 그리고 내용이 약간 난해함 이런 것을 아이들이 이해할 수 있는 간단하고 또 쉬운 영어로 각색을 한 그런 작품인데요. 리버박스라는 비영리 단체에서 이 자료를 가지고 영어 화자들이 오디오 파일을 만든 것들이 있어요. 그것을 들으면서 제가 영어 쉐도잉 하는 모습을 보여드릴게요. 이제 영어 쉐도잉을 제가 이렇게 블루투스를 한쪽에 꽂고 들으면서 이제 할 건데요. 중간중간에 틀리는 부분이 있어요. 이 틀리는 부분을 이제 무시하고 생각하지 않고 바로 넘어가서 다음 흐름으로 이어지는 그 모습을 보여드릴게요. 쉐도잉 하면서 틀리지 않을 수가 없어요. 속도도 그럴 수 있고 발음도 그럴 수 있고 근데 이걸 이 틀리는 부분 때문에 흐름이 끊기면 연습하는데 훈련하는데 좀 방해가 될 수 있기 때문에 제가 그런 거는 무시하면서 쭉 이어갈게요. 그리고 항상 말씀드리는 거지만 쉐도잉 할 때 텍스트가 있으면 그 텍스트를 꼭 한 번은 보면서 단어라든지 구조 같은 것을 그 해석을 하면서 정확히 알고 지나가시면 정말 영어 공부하는 데 도움이 많이 됩니다. 물론 텍스트가 없는 것들도 있어요. 그런 건 할 수 없지만 텍스트가 있다면 꼭 텍스트를 한 번은 참고를 하시기 바랍니다. 그럼 영어 쉐도잉 시작을 할게요. The Children Shakespeare by Edith Nesbit. Introduction. It was evening. The fire burned brightly in the Empire Room. We'd been that day to see Shakespeare's house, and I told the children all that I could about him and his work. Now that sitting by the table, poring over the big volume of the master's plays, lent them by the landlord, and I, with eyes fixed on the fire, was wandering happily in mortal dreamland peopled by Rosalind and Imogen, Lear and Hamlet. A small sigh roused me. I can't understand a word of it, said Iris. And you said it was so beautiful, Rosalind added reproachfully. What does it all mean? Yes, Iris went on. You said it was fairy tale and referred 3 pages and there's nothing about fairies, not even our dwarf, a fairy godmother. What does Miss Graff mean? Advantage and austerity and be like an edict. Stop, stop, I cried. I will tell you the story. In a moment, there's Maslin beside me, crowing with the pledge of the promise of a story always brings them. But you must be quiet a moment and let me think. In truth, it was not easy to arrange the story simply. Even with the recollection of Lamb's tales to help me, I found it hard to tell the Midsummer Night's Dream in words these little ones could understand. But presently I began to tell, and then the word came fast enough. When the story was ended, Iris drew a long breath. It is a lovely story, he said, but it doesn't look at all like that in the book. It is only put differently, I answered. You'll understand when you grow up that the story was at least part of Shakespeare. But it's the story we like, said Rosamond. You see, he did not write for children. No, but you might, cried Iris, flushed with a sudden idea. Why don't you write the story for us so that we can understand them, just as you told us that, and then, when you're grown up, we should understand the play so much better. Do. Do. You will, won't you? You must. Oh, well, if I must, I said. So they settled it for me, and for them these tales were written. End of introduction. Chapter 1. Romeo and Juliet. Once upon a time there lived in Barcelona 2 great fellows named Montague and Capulet. They're both rich, and I suppose they were sensible in most things as other rich people. But in one thing they were extremely silly. There was an old quarrel between the two families, and instead of making it up like reasonable folks, they made it sort of a pet with their quarrel and would not let it die out. So that a Montague wouldn't speak to a Capulet if he met one in a street, nor a Capulet to a Montague, or if they did speak, it was to say rude and unpleasant things which often ended in a fight. And the servants are just as foolish, so that the street fights and duels and uncomfortableness of that kind were always growing out of the Montague and Capulet quarrel. Now Lord Capulet, at the head of the family, gave a party that the grand sovereign danced, and he was so hospitable that he said anyone might come to him, except, of course, the Montagues. But there's a young Montague named Romeo who very much wanted to be there because Rosalind, the lady he loved, had been asked. This lady had never been at all kind to him and he had no reason to love her. But the fact was that he wanted to love somebody, and he hadn't seen the right lady, he was obliged to love her, the wrong one. So to the Capulet's grand party he came with his friend Mercutio and Benvolio. Old Capulet welcomed him and his two friends very kindly, and young Romeo moved about among the crowd of courtly folk dressed in their velvets and satins, the men with jeweled sword hilts and colors, and the ladies with broad brilliant gems on bronze-tinted arms and stones of bright satin in the bright girdles. Romeo was in his best too, and though he wore black mask over his eyes and nose, everyone could see that by his mouth and his hair, and the way he held his head, he was 12 times handsomer than anyone else in the room. Presently admitted that he saw a lady so beautiful and so lovable, that from that moment he never again gave one thought to the Rosalind whom he had thought he loved. When he looked at this other fair lady, she moved on white satin and pearls, and all the world seemed vain and worthless to compare with her. And he was saying to this and something like it to his friend, when Tybalt, Lady Capulet's nephew, hearing his voice, knew him to be Romeo. The Tybalt, being very angry, went at once to his uncle and told him how Montague would come uninvited feast. But old Capulet was too fine a gentleman to be discourteous to any man under his own roof, and he bade Tybalt be quiet. This young man only waited for a chance to quarrel with Romeo. In the meantime, Romeo made his way to the fair lady and told her in sweet words that he loved her, and he kissed her. Just then her mother sent for her, and Romeo found out that the lady on whom he had set his heart so was Juliet, the daughter of Lord Capulet's sworn vow. So he went away, sorrowing indeed, but loving her nonetheless. Then Juliet said to her nurse, "Who is that gentleman who will not dance?" "This name is Romeo and a Montague, the only son of a great enemy," answered the nurse. Then Juliet went to her room and looked out of the window of the beautiful trim great garden where the moon was shining. And Romeo was seated at the garden among the trees because he could not bear to go right away without trying to see her again. So she, not knowing him to be there, spoke her secret thought aloud and told the quiet garden how she loved Romeo, and Romeo heard, was glad beyond measure. Hidden below, he looked up and saw her fair face in the moonlight, framed in a blossoming creepers that grew round her ring. Looked and listened, he felt he'd been carried away in dreams, set down by some magicians in the beautiful enchanted garden. "Why are you called Romeo?" said Juliet. "Since I love you, what does it matter what you call me? Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized, henceforth I never will be Romeo," he cried, stepping into the full red moonlight from the shade of the cypresses and oleanders that had hidden him. He was frightened at first, but when she saw this was Romeo himself and no stranger, she too was glad, and standing in the garden below and she leaning from the window, they spoke long together, each one trying to find the sweetest words in the world to make that pleasant talk that lovers use. And the tale of all the said and the sweet music their voices made together. This all set down with golden book, where children may read it for yourself someday. And the time passed so quickly, as it does before who love each other and are together, that when the time came to part, it seems that they had met at that moment, and did they hardly how to part, said Juliet. And so at last, with lingering and longing, they said goodbye. Juliet went into her room, and a dark curtain, bright window. Romeo went away through the still entry garden like a man in a dream. The next morning, very early, Romeo went to Friar Lawrence, a priest, and telling him all the story, they come to marry him to Julia without delay. And this, after some thought, consented to, but the priest consent, sent her own nurse to Romeo that day to know what he proposed to do. The old woman took back a message that all was well and all things ready for the marriage of Julia and Romeo on the next morning. The young lovers were afraid to ask their parents' consent their marriage, as young people should do, because of the foolish old quarrel between the Capulets and the Montagues. And Friar Lawrence was willing to help the young lovers secretly, because he thought that when they're once married, the parents might soon be told, and the match might put a happy end to the old quarrel. So the next morning early, Romeo and Julia were married at Friar Lawrence's cell, and parted tears and kisses. And Romeo promised to come into the garden that evening, and the nurse got ready a rope ladder to let down from the window so that Romeo could climb up and talk to his dear wife quietly and alone. But that day, the very dreadful had happened. Tybalt, young man, had been so vexed at Romeo's going to the captain's feast that he met him and his two friends in the street, called Romeo villain, and asked him to fight. Romeo had no wish to fight with Julia's cousin, but Mercutio drew a sword and he and Tybalt fought. And Mercutio was killed. When Romeo saw that his friend was dead, he forgot everything except anger at the man who had killed him. And he and Tybalt fought till Tybalt fell dead. So in the very day of his wedding, Romeo killed his dear Julia's cousin and was sentenced to be banished. Poor Juliet, her young husband, met death at night. Indeed, he climbed to the rope ladder among the flowers and found their window. But the meeting was a sad one, and they parted with bitter tears and hearts heavy, because they could not know when they should meet again. That Julia's father, who of course had no idea that she was in love, should have a gentleman named Paris. He was so angry when she refused that she hurried away, asked Friar Lawrence what she should do. He advised to pretend her consent, and then he said, I will give you a draught that will make you seem to be dead for 2 days, and then, when they take you to church, it will be to bury you and not to marry you. They will put you on a boat and think you're dead, and before you wake up, Romeo and I will be there to take care of you. Will you do this, or are you afraid? I will do it. Talk not to me of the years, said Julia. And she went home, told her father she would marry Paris. Spoken now told her father the truth. Well, then this would have been a different story. Lord Kepler was very much pleased to get his own way and set about inviting his friends and getting the wedding ready. At first stayed up all night, for there was a great deal to do and very little time to do it in. Oh, Lord Kepler was anxious to get Julia married because he saw she was very unhappy. Of course, she was really fretting about her husband Romeo, but her father thought she was grieving for the death of her cousin Tybalt, and he thought marriage would give her something else to think about. Only in the morning, the nurse came to the cold Julia and dressed her for the wedding, but she would not wake. And at last, the nurse cried out suddenly, Alas, alas, help, help! My lady's dead. Oh, well a day that ever I was born. The Lady Kepler came running in, and Lord Kepler and Lord Paris, the bridegroom. They lay Julia cold and white and wifeless. All their weeping could not wake her. So it was a burying that day instead of a marrying. Meantime, Friar Lawrence sent a message to Ment with a letter of Romeo, telling me of all these things. And all would have been well, only the messenger was delayed and could not go. Ill news travels fast. Romeo's servant, who knew the secret of the marriage but not of Julia's pretended death, heard of a funeral and hurried to Mantua. Romeo is young wife and dead, lying in the grave. So it is so that I lie by Julia's side tonight. and he bottoms up a poison and struck. He hastened to the tomb where Julia was lying. It was not a grave, but a vault. He broke down the door and was just going down the stone steps that led to the vault where all the dead captives lay, when he heard a voice behind him calling on him to stop. It was the Count Paris, who had married Juliet that very day. How dare you come here and disturb the dead bodies of the captives, you vile Montague, cried Paris. Poor Romeo, happy mad and sorrow, yet try to answer gently. You are told, said Paris, that if you return to Bernard, you must die. I must indeed, said Romeo. I came here for nothing else. Good gentle youth, leave me, oh good. Before I do any harm, I love you better than myself. Go, leave me here. Then Paris said, I defy you, and I will roust you as a felon. Then Romeo, in his anger and despair, drew his sword. They fought, and Paris was killed. As Romeo's sword pierced him, Paris cried, Oh, I am slain. If thou be merciful, open the tomb, lay me with Juliet. And Romeo said, In faith I will. And he carried the dead man into the tomb and laid him by the dear Juliet's side. Then he kneeled by Juliet, spoke to her, and held her in his arms, and kissed her cold lips, believing she was dead. While all the while she was coming nearer and nearer to the time of her awakening, then he drank to the poison and died beside his sweetheart and his wife. Now came Friar Lawrence, and it was too late, and so all that had happened. And then poor Juliet walked out of Eversfield to find them both dead beside her. The noise of the fight brought other folks to the place too, and Friar Lawrence, hearing them, ran away, and Juliet was left alone. She saw the cup that held the poison and knew how all it happened, and since no post was left for her, she drew out Romeo's dagger and thrust it through her heart, and so, falling with the head on Romeo's breast, she died. And here ends the story, these faithful and most unhappy lovers. And when the old folks knew from Friar Lawrence of all had befallen, they sorrowed exceedingly, and now, seeing all the mischief their wicked quarrel had brought, they repented of it, and over the bodies of their dead children they clasped hands at last, and friendship and forgiveness. End of chapter 1.